What's going on, everyone? This is Noah from Spark the Trade podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, one of the bigger guests, probably the biggest guest to this point on the podcast, Mr. David Long, the CEO of NECA. David, how's it going?
It's going great, Noah, and I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be on the podcast. I wouldn't say only other physical size of I'm bigger, but I'm just like you. I'm a journeyman wireman, came through the apprenticeship program, got a ticket in my pocket, but all good. And I appreciate what you're doing and making people aware of the industry out there.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to do the episode. With that being said, if you want to just give a little introduction about yourself, I know you started, I believe, in 1975 with Miller Electric, but yeah, if you want to just give a little introduction about yourself.
Yeah, I got out of high school, Noah, and didn't really want to go to college. Went into the apprenticeship program. Work at that point in Florida was so bad that our apprenticeship program didn't even take a class in 1976. So I had to roll over to 1977, and I got into the apprenticeship program. It was a 4-year program. Graduated in 1981. Started running a service truck, and then became a foreman, general foreman. Superintendent. Went into management, estimator, APM, PM, senior PM, vice president, and was fortunate enough to be, selected as president of Miller in 2012. 90-year-old company, family business, first non-family president. So that's how I got here. I served as a volunteer on a NECA board as a
Very cool.
governor of the chapter, and then got elected district vice president, and then was elected president, and then came over to CEO from that position in 2019.
It's awesome. And I guess if you were standing in front of a group, an apprentice class today, what do you tell them the trade gave you that a 4-year degree couldn't? Because a lot of people, I know myself, I went to college first, got my bachelor's, then joined the trade. But what would you tell someone a 4-year degree couldn't give them?
Well, I use this saying, I've used it before, that my dad said I either need to get an education or a trade. And, fortunate enough, he passed away a few years ago, and I never was able to say I got both. I think sometimes it's not an either or. We have some very intelligent and smart intellectual people and it requires that to go through the apprenticeship program and do the things that we do. I think oftentimes we sell ourselves short
Yeah,
that, we're not in an English comp class or we're not in a chemistry class, but the fact of the matter is we're doing some pretty incredible things. So, I like you, I later went and got, used my apprenticeship credits and got a bachelor's of science degree in business management. But, looking back on it, could I got here without it? Yeah, I could have. It did help me become a better CEO, but I don't necessarily believe it's essential. But I think sometimes, the big misnomer that I really, really hate that's out there is, we're a very intelligent, educated workforce.
yeah.
Okay. And it's mighty funny that in this race of AI, we need more people like us than ever before. So I think sometimes we like to take a, we, tr- we've been poised and framed to take a back seat. And I think that's wrong.
Very true. And something I find, well, not that I find, but a lot of, especially younger apprentices, if they do want a college experience, a lot of the apprenticeship schools are partnered up at least with community colleges. So they are able to at least pursue at least an associate's degree to begin with. And then obviously they can go off for a bachelor's and things of that nature. So that's always pretty cool to know, especially if you don't know that.
Yeah,
But if,
and no, it's much easier now. I only got 30 credits for mine. Okay, so today they, get anywhere from 48 to 60 credits, and so it's a much easier pathway than before. I think sometimes having a college degree gives someone self confidence to
I agree
start
with that.
with, and so I think it makes people feel like they're more well-rounded and stuff. But certainly, if you're going to go and own a company or you're going to start your own company, absolutely unequivocally, you need to get accounting background. There's some tools in the toolbox that
Yeah.
you would need depending on where you're going.
Fully agree with that. And you just touched on AI. NECA has described electrical construction as roughly a $250 billion industry with demand accelerating rapidly. From where you sit, is this data center and electrification wave a genuine structural shift in the trade, or do you eventually seeing this kind of settling out?
Let's take it in brackets. AI has given a lot of opportunities for a lot of us to work a lot of hours and bring in more people into our industry than ever before and be very creative. So opportunity wise, it's enormous. I read a quote where a gentleman said just this week that AI is not going to replace you, but if you don't understand AI, you'll be working for somebody who understands AI. I think AI in our world, Noah, it's going to lead to a lot of things different. I think the service technician is going to have to be different because of integration and control systems that manually we would have to do in the past between, mechanical and electrical. I think AI is going to take care of that. I also think that AI is going to create a better electrical system as far as troubleshooting. I can see us putting on, lack of a better term, glasses and goggles and face shields and looking at whatever the problem is in the control circuit and it laying it out for us. I see some of those things coming about. So I think if we understand how to use AI, AI won't use us. Does that
Right.
make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and building off kind of like the glasses aspect, meta glasses. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
Yes.
have you ever used them?
Yes. I just, in theory and stuff, and, a lot of people give their speeches off of them and, those kind of things. The next step is taking those meta glasses and looking at a transformer where you and I would know how to hook up a wide delta system. You can put the glasses on and it'll practically connect it for you. Okay. I think there are some things that will allow us to do better training and safety protection because we can take the meta glasses, show a failure, and nobody gets hurt.
Yep.
And so that's some of the things that, we're basically experimenting with at the ETA and other things is, virtual training like never before, going into our training centers and somebody sitting into an instructor and getting 720 hours or 900 hours of training, that's got to change completely
Fully agree.
because now there's no doubt that computer mediated learning, people learn different, they learn better. And not only that, we know at the ETA when people are using the computer mediated platform, we know where people are failing out, so to speak. So they're not getting a three-phase circuit or they're not getting, four-way switches. We begin to understand where we're failing to teach properly to make a better student. So that's helping us get better as an entity to provide instructions. Yes.
I agree with that, and I think if we don't adapt, we die, and especially streamlining processes and things of that nature. I think that'll only continue to help build the electrical industry, especially on the IBEW side. So I think it's very important, and I'm kind of excited to see where AI takes us into the future. So it'll be interesting.
Well, back in my day and your day, you were interviewed, you were placed into the apprenticeship and you started a class,
Mhm.
correct? Typically, they would start in September. Maybe if they started another class, they'd start February, right? So you'd have 2 off cycles. The future, Noah, is no doubt gonna be somebody's gonna start when they qualify, interview, and are hired, and so people will be coming into the apprenticeship year-round, and then they will be placed into a track over time, which is gonna allow people to come in when they need to come in. It also will allow them to go at the speed they wanna go. I mean, you know yourself, you and a few others are overachievers, you may want to blow through the curriculum and go on and get, see what I'm saying, and get further
Yeah,
training. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. Also, you also got to remember in the old way, we were only as good as the instructor standing before us. That's all.
it's kind of like my
So,
time at Ohio University. I
right.
fully agree with.
There is a reason why some churches in America's got five and some's got 500 and some's got 5,000. It comes down to who's standing up front teaching, right?
That is very true. Diving off of that, I know you said obviously we want to speed up processes of getting more people into the trades and getting them advanced as fast as possible. The BLS and industry estimates point to tens of thousands of electrician openings each year. I know that's the same with the IBEW. From NECA's perspective, what's today's workforce gap, and are we gaining ground or falling further behind, in your opinion?
I think there's a couple layers to it, Noah. I think number one, you have to say, like in your area, 683, Columbus, Ohio, we need all the people we can get. Okay. If you look at Seattle, you look at Portland, some other areas, and some areas of the Northeast are slower, right? So I don't want to paint a broad brush. I want to paint individually. Taking Ohio, we need people and we're going to continue to need people, right?
Hmm.
So I think we've taken a lot of people. I think we've done some incredible things, but I think we have got to ramp up exponentially more than we ever dreamed that we would have.
I would
We've
agree with that.
probably dodged a couple bullets, Noah, in your area because of the Intel project slowing down. That will, if we had Intel going right now with everything you have going in
Yeah.
Columbus, we would be upside down. So it's a moment in time. We also are geared by that we have the registration with the DOL. We got to have 8,000 work hours. That's
Hmm.
challenges. So we got. So if you look at Pennsylvania, Ohio, Missouri, Indiana, you look at Texas, you look at Georgia, Atlanta, those kind of areas. You look at them. No, we're not going fast enough. Okay. And we know that. President Cooper and I both know that, and we've put some pretty strong initiatives. I think also, no, I was at their membership development meeting. I spoke there 2 weeks ago or a week ago. We've already gained 30,000 IBW members this year.
Yeah,
Record setting. I mean, record setting. Here's that other problem with that layer of training. You're bringing people in from all levels, and we got to be able to get them to a standard and a level that we have. So those are challenges.
correct.
You know, we also have to remember that you may be in the classroom 720 to 900 hours, but you spend 8,000 hours working with people on job who are really teaching you the trade. We're giving you a textbook comprehension of the electrical trade, but the trade is actually taught at the gang box out at the end of the day. So those are
That's
challenges because we're bringing in more people. No, it's harder today to be a foreman and a general foreman on our jobs than when I was there. Okay. Because you got to remember, when I was a general foreman or a superintendent on a job, remember, everybody on the job was either just like me or was coming through the process I'd come through. So
yep.
it was easy to lay a crew out, right? Easy. In fact, I think our CBA said at the time that I can manage 17 people in my crew. One foreman. Think about that.
That's impressive.
Well, that's a fact, and I probably had more than that at times. I mean,
Yeah,
you'd have one general foreman and 4 foremen, and we run the whole job, and we didn't have any problems because you gotta remember, we were all alike. We were all either all alike or all trained alike or being trained alike. So it was easy. Now we're bringing people in at different levels, and the foreman and the general foreman today have the hardest job in the construction industry because they have a transitioning crew,
hmm,
right? They're working more hours than they've ever worked. And at the same time, the expectation from them is much different. All the recording, all the reporting, all the data, all the tracking. Being a general foreman today in our world is a tough job. I mean, a tough job. And you have to want to do that.
that is very true. It takes a special person and a person with a pretty broad temperament, to say the least. It's
Well,
interesting.
and I think also, Noel, we missed the boat for several decades. We never taught anyone really how to manage people. Everything we did was based on a technical. If you were a great journeyman, they were going to make a foreman out of you, and hopefully you made a great foreman, and then they'd be a great general foreman. And in this world we live in today, emotional intelligence of working people is as critical as understanding the trade itself.
Fully agree with that. I'm 100% on board with that. And it's nice to see someone in your position openly state something like that, so I can appreciate it.
Well, not only that, Noel, COVID really hurt us, and we have a workforce coming to us today. And when you look at our mental health situation, those are all challenges for a leader on the crew. That's a challenge for everyone at the gang box.
That's true.
That's the piece that's missing too. I want you to challenge, and I hope that anybody out there working in the field, I want to list you this challenge. The people around you and the care about them is not on the foreman, it's not on the general foreman, it's not on the contractor, it's on every individual that is on that job that comes in contact with every individual. It's hand to hand combat when it comes to being like we like to pride ourselves in IBW. We are our brother's keeper, right?
I was about to
Are we
say,
really? Right? Are we really? What did you do today for an apprentice working with you that didn't seem to be just right? Seemed like something was bothering you. Did you ask? Those are very important times right now, and we're getting a workforce coming out of COVID that has very low personal skills of communication, and we've got to open those channels up. Okay, so we have a lot of challenges ahead of us, Noah, especially with people challenges, right? We're
yep,
bringing more people into the workforce faster. We're gonna have to evaluate their skill sets, right? And then on top of that, Noah, we're taking fabrication and manufacturing and ramping it up faster than ever, right?
yep.
And I assure you, if we do a data center today in 10 months, the tech company's gonna want us to do it in 8 months next time, right?
See that every day.
So we have some challenges. I would have to say, if I could say anything to your audience, don't underestimate what we used to call our soft skills, right? That's people skills and stuff. Those are the hard skills today. We know we can teach technical courses. What we can't teach is the care and the supplement of people on the job site to make them feel wanted, appreciated. You see what I'm saying? And go home at the end of the day. That's a challenge for us right now. And when our people are working 60 and 70 hours a week, they're burning out their own self, having family problems themselves because they're missing ball games. They're missing all these things.
Yep.
These are some challenges that we all have to own as a group. Okay. And I can tell you, President Cooper and I, we talk about it every week, every week, because we know we have some challenges around this.
I fully agree with that. It's kind of a trickle down effect, and then eventually it just all builds up, and then it can get pretty scary from there. I know mental health issues have greatly impacted some people I personally know, and it's pretty sad to see.
You know, when I was an apprentice, Noah, my journeyman knew what my grades were constantly in apprenticeship school.
Really,
Really?
that's that's awesome.
Okay, so then we got in a situation where you can't share grades and that kind of stuff. Get all that. But that just lets you know that the level that they had invested in me, right?
Yeah,
And I knew that I was being held accountable, not because they were going to fire me or whatever else. It's because they cared about me, and if I, and they knew what my grades were the whole time. I mean, I didn't, they would ask, and I'm saying to all of your listeners, ask the questions. Just ask how somebody doing, how's school going? How's your family going? I mean, we
yeah.
just cannot be robotic and expect anything different than what we're getting. So I would encourage every one of you, and especially, if you're in a leadership position, it's exponentially harder.
Agree with that. I would fully agree with that. And we were just talking about working long hours. Most job sites, especially I can speak at least here in Ohio, 60 to 70 hours a week. Google recently committed $50 million towards the Electrical Training Alliance and skilled trades growth overall. What guardrails make sure apprenticeship curriculum stays jointly governed by the NEC and the IBEW, even when some of the industry's biggest customers are help funding the pipeline?
Well, I'm going to chastise you a little bit.
No, you're good.
All right, you put up one guardrail, you
Hmm.
put up the IBW, but the other guardrail is NECA. It is a joint program.
Correct.
And we have 4 trustees. We have myself and Ian Andrews on the NECA side. We have Kenny Cooper and Matt Hollis on the other side, right?
Hmm.
That's the guardrails.
Yeah.
Okay, so nothing comes out to ETA without President Cooper and I's approval and with a team from him and our team reviewing it. Okay. And at the same time, we have Todd Stafford and an enormous amount of staff over there. But
Hmm.
long before something comes out of the ETA, at our level, it has went through multiple layers of review. Previous people that came through the program, people who are responsible at all levels, and we review it. And before President Cooper and I even sign off to send it to the DOL for certification, it comes to us. Okay, so it can't go to the Department of Labor without President Cooper and I's signature on it.
Pretty cool. I
So,
didn't know
so,
that.
so I don't worry about something coming out of the ETA. I don't. Now, sometimes we get in a hurry and things come, but we have a tremendous amount of teams behind the scenes working with the ETA and their staff to be completely confident of what we're going to go. Because once we put it in, before we can put it in any program across the country, we've got to put it through the federal DOL. And if currently if it's a Republican administration, so I take the lead on that. If it's a Democrat administration, then President Cooper takes the lead on it because that's how we have to handle that. But nothing is going to the Secretary of Labor and his team without President Cooper and I's signature on it. Nothing.
Pretty cool. You taught me something new. That's pretty cool to know, and I appreciate you taking the time to break that all down. I'm sure a lot of there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that people don't realize, especially rank and file members. So getting to learn those insights is always a pretty cool thing, at least from my standpoint. So I can
Yeah. So
appreciate.
when a local program puts out a certificate, no matter what it is,
Hmm.
President Cooper and I know that they're putting that certificate out with our signature. Okay. So we will absolutely make sure that our teams working with Todd Stafford and his team has
Hmm.
vetted every layer of it out. Because you got to remember one thing about it, it's one thing to teach wrong. Let's go there. What's worse is to teach it wrong and get somebody hurt. So we have a tremendous amount of liability here, especially when you start doing transformers, 3-phase, control wiring, startup, checkout. And no, the code, overlaying the code into that is the easiest process. That's the easiest process. Okay. Now
Agreed.
he has ETA has code folks. President Cooper has code folks, and I have code folks. They all review it. All review it. So we know whether it's going to be if it's met if it passes the NEC test. Absolutely no clue. That's before we even get to the major review. They have to have that.
That's pretty cool to know. Once again, thanks for breaking that all down. That's all new to me, so I greatly appreciate that.
So let's go back to the $50 million. This is the second pass. We had already done 12 million, I think it was, with Google. We've done some stuff with BlackRock and other things.
Hmm.
So when we originally started with Google, who was the first, they came and because we were doing so much work, they wanted to know how to help us. President Cooper and I met with them, right?
Hmm.
We had Todd Stafford. Okay, so we felt like no, we needed some help back house getting some things out. Like we was already 75% into getting most of our curriculum, in Spanish, and there were some things we were trying to do. And also we felt like they could really strengthen us in the IT department because that's their world, right? So we sat down with them. They told us, they were giving us X millions of dollars. We had to break it down to them and their executives how we were going to spend the money, right? And what we were going to spend the money on. And there's an accountability. They have auditors. We have the ETA auditors. President Cooper has his legal team. We have our legal team monitoring it as we go, right? So there was very distinct. One of the things that they wanted to do in Ohio was they said we want to tie this to increase in number of apprentices, right?
Yeah.
So we said, okay, well, we should help the Columbus JTC. If they take X number of more apprentices, they get X number of dollars. That's
Yeah.
how we tied that. And we have the ETA, Todd Stafford, Greg Griner. Those are the two, mainly Greg Griner, who works with them, and somebody from President Cooper and Ian Andrews works with Google every day, where we're at, how we monitor it. Okay, so
Yeah.
Google didn't ask. So let me be clear. Google never asked. They asked how they could help us and support us. They never asked us to change anything. What we need to do is say, how do we apply that money that is distributed equally to help all of us move forward? We didn't want to just help Columbus, Ohio. We wanted to help every JTC across America by fixing and enhancing certain things at ETA. So that's what we did. Then they came back with this time around. They've asked for some more specific areas to help. Greg Reiner, President Cooper's team, and my team built them a budget.
Awesome.
And then they presented the budget to Google. Okay. And then Google starts working back with President Cooper and I, and they go, hey, we're going to approve this and we're going to approve this. And, can you make a tweak here, tweak there? And so that's how this is unfolding. So we have a program.
Yeah.
We're doing their work. They want to help us. They don't want to compromise because they know we have great qualified people. Okay. What they want to do is help us create more great qualified people. So that's the Google and the BlackRock money. We went down to Texas with BlackRock. We'll probably be going in a couple other areas with BlackRock. And it has really helped us free up a little bit. And here's why. Some of the money's allowed us, Noel, to be able to, President Cooper and I, to work with Todd Stafford and our teams and sit down and dream big. Because you got to remember, our traditional way, Noah, is men and women work in the field. There's a contribution that's been negotiated at the local levels, paid into the local JTC.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the local programs are funded, right? The only monies that come to the ETA is typically on book fees and that kind of stuff. And they give you a magnitude. We spend over $40 million at ETA here in Washington, creating a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on behind the scenes. So when Google came to us, President Cooper and I explained the model to them that we can't expect a local program to grow because you got to have work hours. Then the money gets paid. Then the money gets to the JTC. Then you have money to spend. So that time frame can be anywhere from 4 months to 8 months behind. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
their mindset was, okay, we'll come in and we'll soften that curve. What can you do sooner? Right. So that allowed us, Noah, to do a lot of research and development, trying to figure out, okay, we don't have to go to the local program, which, by the way, President Cooper and I don't sit on those local boards. We're not trustees on those boards. That's typically a business manager selects his side and the chapter selects their side, and they're their own autonomy.
Yeah.
This gives us an opportunity to have some money for some areas that we didn't have to go to them and say, we want you to give us $2 million because we want to try X, Y, Z. Google and BlackRock and those people were giving us money saying, why don't you try X, Y, Z? Let's see where it takes us. So it's allowed us to be very creative and do some research and development on things that we want to see if it has a greater impact on our training than we think, with no cost to the locals, to our contractors, or to the JTCs. That's the biggest advantage that we have right now.
Very cool. And I'm sure having additional money definitely helps, like you were saying, not speed up processes, but enhances training and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see where we are in maybe 5 years, 10 years, and so forth. That's pretty cool.
But I want, but I really want for you to know and your listeners to know, President Cooper and I have not sold anything to anyone, and we will always maintain the integrity of our training. Okay,
Awesome.
and that's right up front and center. Now, what we want to do is say, okay, we've trained like this since the 40s, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does training need to look like, Noah, for an individual in 2035.
A lot
How
different
did
than
they
now.
how do they learn? You know what else, Noah? How do they use AI? What kind of tech do we create? What kind of foreman should we have? What is the expectation? You see what I'm saying? So there's a President Cooper and I are looking at right now. We sit down and we're looking into the 2030s and beyond. In fact, he and I are looking at 2032, 33, 34, saying, okay, here's where we're at with our training. Here's where we're at with our health care. Here's where we're at with our retirement funds. Here's where we're at. What
Yeah,
do we look? Okay, so that's the so I want you to understand President Cooper and I always are looking out 5 years. The what if? What if it slows down? You hear all that. Oh, what's going to happen when this work slows down? Guess what? We are absolutely have a group working on that. What happens as this slows down? We got to make sure that we maintain our markets, right? We cannot chase so much of this big work that we lose our normal markets, right? So what does that look like and how do we do that? Those are real challenges that we're facing because it's easy to say we have all this work. Well, what if we don't? Now what?
exactly.
So those are so always remember with President Cooper and I, we're always looking at market retention no matter what the market is. Okay. Because the only way we survive is work and man hours. Your
Gotcha.
retirement fund, your health care, everything we do is based on work hours, right? So we have got to balance the work hours and we got to understand where we're at.
Fully agree, and that's something that kind of scares me is when these data centers do slow down. I know a lot of contractors are kind of getting away from like their service contracts with hospitals and such. It's going to be an interesting time. Hopefully things are worked out, and it sounds like your team is at least trying to forecast things to ensure that doesn't happen. So it'll be interesting to say the least. There's a lot of money to be made, but we also need to make sure we have long-term longevity rather than a short-term gold rush.
Yeah,
So
we have to balance the workload and always maintain the market. Okay.
that's perfect. And I guess I know NECA and the IBW are about as close of a labor management partnership as exists anywhere in the country, but contractors and labor don't always have identical interests. There's always some headbutting, I'm sure. Can you point to a recent issue where NECA and the IBW genuinely saw things differently? Or does the partnership sometimes make those disagreements less visible?
The partnership on President Cooper and I will always mask everything going on. Here's why. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and he is a great friend. He has a membership of almost 1,000, almost 1,000,000 members now to represent. And if he did not represent them to the best of his ability, I would lose respect for him. Okay. I
Understand?
have 4,000 contractors in the US and 600 in Canada, and I got to represent them to the best of my ability. If I did anything different, okay, so let's start there.
Yeah,
President Cooper and I have this saying, Noah. It's not how we agree; it's how we disagree.
I like that.
Okay, we're gonna disagree.
Hmm.
What we cannot do is be dysfunctional, and what we cannot do is let members on both sides know we're disagreeing. Okay,
I would agree with
we
that.
have to continue to work, to continue to work, to continue to work. And when we step on stage, our friendship that you see is genuine. Our respect for each other is genuine, and we're working for the same goal. Okay. We will never deviate from that. It is no different, Noel, than as parents. If the parents start fighting, the kids see it firsthand, right? So we
That is
cannot do that. So President Cooper and I have to say, it's not how we're going to agree, it's going to how we disagree. We're coming at every issue from a north south perspective or an east west. Absolutely unequivocal. So
yeah,
we got to figure out here's how we do it. What is the best case scenario for President Cooper and the IBW? And what's the worst case?
yeah.
And what is the best case for NECA and its contractors? And what's the worst case? We establish them immediately on everything because that's our guardrails, right? And then we start trying to figure out, and we get a lot of great advice from a lot of people, and we call a lot of people across this country, both union leaders, local union leaders, contractors, and try to make decisions. I think, Noah, one of the things that I would encourage you to do, and you must do, is you need to come up to Washington and sit through a CIR session. Okay.
That would be something of great interest.
Well, if you want an invite, my team will invite you. It's not a problem. We get you in there because you need to see we have the best labor relations of any industry in America. And if President Cooper and I could go down to that Capitol building, we could fix a lot of crap down there. Okay. So here's what I'm saying to you. Think about this. We have better labor relations across the country than you think because he has 500, whatever, we have over 800 agreements in this country, right? So we're trying to maintain and we're trying to meet the customer demand. We're trying to do all these things, but at the end of the day, we have got to sit down and say, okay, what's a personality problem?
Mhm.
What's a CBA problem? And what's an industry problem? That's about how they break down. Sometimes in some areas you have so much scar tissue, we don't know how they got there. They've disagreed for years. They're
Yeah.
probably going to disagree for the rest of their life. And if both of them are going to heaven, one's going to have to be on one side of heaven and one on the other. Probably going to be that way. That's a personality problem. When you have a dispute problem, it's either over contract, renewals and money. Most of the time, it's money, right?
Yeah.
Or you have a grievance process and you can drill that down. And we have teams that work on that. So let's say 683 has a problem. They handle it locally. When they can't handle it locally, President Cooper has a team. He sends in, I send in a team. The IBW team there reports up to Vice President Austin Keyser. Our team reports up to Jack Savage. So they go in, right? If they can't resolve it, they're coming to
Correct.
CIR. Both of those teams know has to write a brief to go to CIR. You come to CIR, they get to present their case. We have 5 IBW panelists. We have 5 NECA panelists. You want to know what's really cool? That's why you need to come in. Those 5 have to vote on the resolution unanimously.
That's cool. I didn't know that. That's very cool.
Yeah, there's
I
no
like that.
CIR is 100 years old. We solved a lot of things, and we've done a lot of tweaking to it. President Cooper and I did some more modification, mainly about present times. But you got to go in that room, and you got to convince. If
Yeah.
you're representing PW, you got to convince 5 NECA people that you're right, right, or some portion of you're right, and exact opposite. Okay, they resolve the cases. If by some slim chance, and there has been a couple, but they were industry issues, CIR could not solve it. Once they do that, they put it in executive session, which means they're knowing that they have an industry issue. They send it to
Hmm.
President Cooper to start working on it. And that's where we may have to call in OSHA, we may have to call in legal. There's a lot wrapped around that. That's not a dispute over wages. That's not a dispute over a grievance. That's an issue that we got to get right. Okay. So they hand it to us and we try to resolve it. Typically, when we do get it somewhere in some guardrails, we give it back to CIR to rule at the next session. But I would encourage you to come in and talk about CIR on your podcast, because a lot of people don't know that even exists. And so if you have CIR language, no, 683 can't strike, right? So they give
That
up their strike. The contractors can't lock out, so they give out their lockout, right? So they this is their binding arbitration, and they're both all committed to it.
yeah.
So
Uh,
it works, it works, it works, it works, it works. We have 4 sessions a year. It's phenomenal. I know a lot of other trades are trying to do something similar to it, but it's pretty cool. And the men and women that serve on CIR know this industry. They know this industry. They know our contractors. They know our men and women. They know our contracts. They know everything about it. And they're just volunteers. Typically, President Cooper will have 5 business managers. We'll have a couple chapter managers, and then we'll have a couple contractors on there. Because we want contractors to be there because they may have something we don't know about.
yeah. Makes sense. That's pretty cool. All the behind the scenes, and I think it'd be very interesting to see one of those in action. So that's pretty cool. That's very
I,
cool.
I, I would say, Noel, that I would like to say to your audience, they're not in this alone. There's a lot of people working behind the scenes for everything they do, from their CBA to dealing with Google to their training, every aspect of And then you got President Cooper and those guys coming up on their convention. There's a whole mechanism collecting. There's a lot to this, and then on top of that, we have to report to the DOL and some other things. And a lot of people don't know we're sitting on, between NECA and BW, we're sitting on the second largest Taft-Hartley fund in America with our NEBI. And
Really.
so, yeah, so we have, there's a lot going on. I think that's, if I put myself back, no, working with my tools, it was easy for me to say all these things and have no clue what's going on.
And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast. There's exactly that. I feel like in my honest opinion, I think there's a disconnect between a lot of leadership, and that's not just in the IBEW. I'd say leadership across the board in any organization, and whether you want to call them rank and file members, employees, whatever you want to look at them as. I feel like there's a large disconnect. There's not a lot of, I guess, cohesion, in my opinion. And I'm hoping through platforms like this podcast, social media, some of that can be broken down. I think simple communication goes a long way. You're kind of mentioning that earlier as a foreman, just having communication skills. I think just generalized communication in the world of just full blown technology, it would go a lot further than a lot of people would believe. So
Well, that was why when you reached out, we talked. I was anxious to do it because, listen, as the CEO of NECA, I care about your workers as much as Kenneth Cooper does, and he'll tell you that. None of our contractors, I hope and pray, but I'm telling you from NECA CEO, you can't shortcut safety
That
and
is
make me a penny. Okay, so we'll be very clear. You cannot shortcut your training
that's
and
correct.
be who you need to be. Okay, those are absolutely unequivocally things that we will not deviate from. That's what your folks need to understand. And then, in the top of that, Noel, President Cooper and I are having to balance the customer base of America, where we say we're the best, where we say we want to use our contractors, we want to use our people. President Cooper and I are your guys and our contractors, best business developers across America by
Yeah,
demonstrating leadership to the customer base that if you don't take our contractors and you don't use our men and women, you're not getting the best product. Okay. So, in order for us to be able to look in people's faces and say that, we have to create systems that produce that. And that's what we're doing. And what I want to say is it's easy because I've lived that world and I've been at that game, right? No, when I came through the apprenticeship program and I saw the IBW president, he was like some third world person I didn't even know. I mean, how would I ever know him, right?
yeah,
As I've grown up into the system, Noel, there's no one, I promise you, no one on the face of the earth that worked harder for our men and women and for our contractors than President Cooper and I. We might be accused of screwing something up, but we won't be accused of being sorry ass of doing nothing.
I can personally say I can appreciate that. Like I said, I honestly think there's just with anything in life, whether it's a marriage, friendship, this, I think simple communication goes a long way, and I think having conversations like this will hopefully reduce that gap. So, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're in a little bit of a time crunch. I'll end it with one last.
No, we got time. Let me say this much. Ask your questions, whatever it is. I want to be very clear. We have not deviated from our principles, neither one of us. Okay.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even begin to say that President Cooper agree on everything. Okay. I'm not going to because it's not going to happen. Right. But the one thing we do agree on is our men and women that belong to the IBW, which I am one of them,
hmm
and the men and women who own our contracting firms are the best in the business, and we're going to do everything we can to take care of both of them. Okay.
can appreciate that, and I know many other members can would say the exact same thing. And kind of building off that, it kind of leads me into the word legacy. You spent your career going from working in the field, going through the apprenticeship, working in the field with your tools, to leading NECA. When you eventually step away, what has to be in place so this incredible moment of the electrical industry doesn't get squandered 5 to 10 years after you're gone? And do you hope people point and say that that changed because David Long was here?
I would say, Noah, that would be the worst thing that I would want people to say. I've been blessed to be here in this moment in time, and it is my calling. It's Kenneth Cooper's calling too, and we both know that. But at the same time, Noah, to him, much is given us, much is required. For me, I want to make sure down the road. I remember Noah being a first year apprentice and couldn't make a car payment. I remember being a first year apprentice and worried that I would get to make 40 hours.
Yeah,
Right. If I could say anything, I don't want any first year apprentice any day in the future to worry about their future. That they believe that they come to work for our contractors and they belong to our union and they do the things that they need to do themselves personally, that they have a lifelong career that's going to take care of them and their family. That's what I want to leave. That's why President Cooper and I started a new retirement fund. We're looking at every aspect of our lives to make sure that at the end of the day, when you walk out of this industry and you and your family are standing in a supermarket line, you look back with pride and say, I was an IBW member and I worked for a NECA contractor. Anything short of that's a failure. Okay.
I like
And for
that.
one of our customers to be able to say that I used an IBW workforce and a NECA contractor and I got the best electrical for the best value, the safest of anybody on the face of the earth, that's win. Okay. So
Can I re-
that's where we're at today. So legacy, no. Creating an industry that will be everlasting and not depend on one person is the best thing that could happen. If something happened to me, it's just like our staff here. I want them to have the culture and the confidence to move forward. It's not about me. It's about who we are, and that's what we're going to do. Okay.
Can appreciate that. I can say coming from the non-union side to the IBEW, it's done many great things for myself, my family, and those that I've introduced into the IBEW. They'll say the exact same thing. So it'll definitely change a lot of people's lives, especially younger people's lives. And I know it's changed a lot of people's lives currently in the industry. So I can appreciate, especially the retirement. You just talked on that. I think you nailed it, and I can greatly appreciate it.
There's something else I need your, influence on.
That could be a good or a bad thing.
No, the generation coming after us and even now learn different. Okay.
True.
We cannot train the way we've trained. We got to train better. We
Yeah.
got to train different. We got to train a more sophisticated workforce than we ever have. That's a fact. We've got to embrace new technologies. And when people are fabrication and manufacturing, they're not taking your job. We're actually putting those jobs in a more controlled environment. Okay. Those are some diabolical things that sometimes that people have gotten all this misnomer about. Okay. It also makes our job much easier. No, I wouldn't wanna be working. My admiration for men and women working 62, 63, it's hard, this is a hard job.
Yes,
Your
it is.
shoulders break down, your knees break down, you're climbing, okay? And then you go to the outside, the lineman's even worse, okay? So
Yes.
anything that President Cooper and I can do to make that quality of life while you're doing your work and doing your career, we're all in. We're not trying to take an hour, we're trying to make life better. We're trying to make we want people to retire better. I mean, we have 14, 15,000, 14 something thousand apply for NEBF every year, okay? So we have those people retiring, but we don't want them retiring. They can't even cut their grass or they can't do anything. We don't want that. We want the quality of life. So my message and my thing to you is for people that in your audience to hear what I'm saying. We're not trying to take work. We're trying to gather more work and make the work life balance better over the long haul. I mean, you and I both have saw senior general foreman and foreman and even journeyman. I mean, this is not an easy job,
No.
right? So those are some of the things that I would ask you to amplify out there. This is not about anything but the quality of life while you're doing your job and the quality of life when you leave. And at the same time, people learn different and we've got a different workforce. And Noah, it's like this right here. You talking about people. Think about this. In 1938, I think we had 190,000 people in the US in the military in
Mhm.
1938, and we produced like 1.3 million cars. Okay, we go into World War II. How many people you think we had in the military in 1945? Just guess at it.
Maybe double? I mean, I have no idea if I'm being brutally honest.
8.2 million.
Yep, nowhere close. I was nowhere close.
Oh, get this. We produced 1.3 million cars in 1938. In 1945, we produced less than 40. Here's what I'm saying. In order for America to win World War II, they changed everything about everything.
To be able to
Right. In order for us to win this war of work and AI, we got to change everything about everything. And Noah, by the way, if we don't win the AI race, we lose World War III.
I fully agree with that.
Okay. And then think about this, Noah. Everybody's worried about all these things. Think about when we start building power plants behind data centers and we start microgridding across the country, which we need. By the way, in World War II, it became the interstate highway so we could move the military across the country. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to microgrid America so we can move utility power across the country. Those are things that we have to have. And what I'm saying to your audience, I want your audience to know that President Cooper and I spend 25 hours a day, understanding these things and trying to figure out how do we position our Army, which is IBW NECA, to take advantage of this moment in history. That's what we're trying to do, okay?
I can appreciate that. And going back to AI, that's obviously a big topic all over the US right now, especially in the trades. I honestly think it's just something most people don't understand. I think it was NAB2 is now, I'm not fully sure, but I believe I read an article where NAB2 is now incorporating AI courses, maybe in some capacity. I don't know if that's true or not. I
It
believe I
is,
read that, but
and that's what I'm saying, Noah, we need to stop. We gotta do a transition. We've gotta go back from teaching control wiring to teaching AI. There's a lot of things we gotta do. So so here's what I'm saying to you and your coworkers out there. we're having to do we're having to do open heart surgery on an engine running. It's just not, we're having to do open heart surgery. It's easy for somebody to repair an engine on a car. They just turn the car on, take the engine out. President Cooper and I don't have that luxury. We're like heart surgeons. We're trying to do all these things while we're still having to run full speed. So it's very difficult. So when you hear and you see things, only thing I ask is you step back for a moment, and no doubt you're not going to understand it. Okay, because sometimes I don't even understand some of the things we're having to do. But take a step back and have the confidence that at the top of NECA and our team, and the top of President Cooper and his team, we're doing this for the good of all,
That's how it should be. I totally
right?
agree.
So,
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is, if there's anything I could do is to help me convince the workforce, we're doing it for the good of all. Because our job is not only to preserve, but to drive the industry. The worst thing that we could do is drive this industry backwards, and we're not trying to do that. So it's not going to be pretty, it's not going to be perfect, but one thing it will be a step to lead to prosperity for our men and women in the field and to our contractors.